What is going on, everyone, and welcome to r/EntitledParents. Now, today's first story is all about one entitled dad taking away a PlayStation from his son for no real reason. But before we jump into that, I firstly want to say a massive thank you for 560,000 subscribers. We are now just 40k away from the big 600,000, and I really want to hit that before the end of 2020. So if you are new around here and you haven't subscribed, hit the button. Let's go. My dad tried taking away my PlayStation I paid for and got mad when I did not just hand it over. Okay, so here is some quick information on my father before I get into the story. So my father is an entitled parent. He is always quick to make decisions without talking to my mum. Besides that, my father has always been harsher on me than any of my other siblings. Examples being, he is always quick to violence with me, often trying to corner me in a place I can't run because he is blocking the exit, and doing it when no one else is around, so there is no proof to what I am saying. In recent years, he has been caught doing this, and so my family recently has been more inclined to believe me now. Even when he is not violent, he is quicker to take stuff away from me with little reason to do so, like taking my phone away for a week because I did not have time to do the dishes, often my little brother made in the middle of the night before I go to school. So here is the actual story now. So this year has been hard on me. On top of coronavirus, my little brother, who is an entitled brat, has been causing chaos in my house ever since quarantine began. He would often go on political rants over the smallest things that would last hours, or he would belittle my mum because she was scared of the coronavirus and she has asthma. If anyone would call out my little brother, he would get even angrier, and I would have to protect my mum from my 14-year-old brother, who is like 5'11" and growing. Well, eventually school began again, and for 2 weeks me and my older sister had to watch him while my mum went to work, so my little brother would not go and yell racist stuff at his teachers, which he did multiple times. After 2 weeks, he was put in a mental hospital, something we had been arranging without him knowing for months. By the way, my little brother's outbursts had got so bad I had nightmares because of them. Once he was gone, all the stress I had been holding within me hit me all at once, and so for a few weeks my grades started to slip as I was trying to process everything that had happened and recover my grades. They were slipping, but I still went to my Zoom meetings. One of my teachers got worried about me because I had them the year prior and they noticed something was wrong with me, and so I told them everything that had happened and they understood. They were such a kind teacher. So skip about a week and I started doing my schoolwork again, and I was confident I could get caught up because I still had a few weeks ahead of me because I went to a school that had 9-week grading periods. So, the same day I was starting to get back on track, I was working in my room, which is directly across from my parents, and I heard my dad come out of his room and approach mine, but he did not knock. Instead, he went back into his room. I got a really bad feeling because my dad, if he ever has something to tell me, he always just tells me through my door or knocks. He never just waits to tell me something later. Me being worried, I left my room and listened by his door. He was on the phone with my teacher and she was calling him because she was worried about me and was talking with him about getting a plan to put me back on track. She also mentioned that I was failing her class and a few others. After the call ended, he came out of his room and saw me standing there and asked for my phone. I turned it off and handed it to him, and then he said that he was taking my PlayStation until my grades get back up. And I told him no, I'd purchased my PlayStation with money I made from a job I had earlier this year. And I told him he could take anything else, even my TV, but not my PlayStation. He tried arguing with me, but I said if he took my property, I would retaliate in the future. When I said that, he started coming towards me like he was going to punch me, but I yelled as loud as I could for my older sister, who was downstairs listening to the conversation, and she ran upstairs in less than 20 seconds. My dad was angry for losing his chance to attack me and blamed me for starting a violent interaction, so he was annoyed and proceeded to pick up a soundbar and break it in half over my mother's jewelry box she had had for 30 years. After that, he yelled at my sister to take me away from him. I don't know why he did that, as I was staying calm. I never even yelled. There is more to this story, and I might post it later depending on if people want to hear it. I will have pictures of the stuff he destroyed on my account since I can't post pictures on the subreddit. By the way, I had to dig through the trash to find the soundbar because my dad tried hiding the evidence from my mum since she would be angry since she had bought it just 2 weeks prior. And look, we actually have the soundbar here. Wow, this guy really did post pictures. That looks destroyed and it is out of the trash. Oh my goodness. And there you go, guys. If you thought for one second that maybe this story was a little bit farcical or not completely 100% legit, I think that photo confirms that this dad has some serious problems. I don't know why you would just break a soundbar that your wife has just paid for, or why you would try and nearly attack your kid. Yeah, this guy has some anger issues, and honestly, OP, I kind of feel like you're in a bad place right now. Your life isn't completely safe. This is a problem. If I were you, OP, honestly, I would say just tell everything that's happened to your teacher, be completely honest about your dad's violence, and also you need to talk with your mum more and just make sure that she knows exactly what is going on. This stuff is completely serious, and yeah, I do not want it to get out of hand more for no real reason just because of your dad's anger issues. Please, talk to somebody. Now for our second story, Karen insults others for not being religious, gets puked on by a crafty kid. My aunt, we'll call her Karen here, seemed to have an obsession with virtue signaling. Growing up, she loved telling others how much better she was than everyone else. Her go-to points for this were being vegan and being Christian. This story is about the latter. For many Christmases, Aunt Karen would make a point to tell me or my dad what bad people we were for not being religious like she was. We never went to church, and my dad never made me take Sunday school. I remember Aunt Karen saying things like, "That's not gonna get you to heaven, you know," or "It's called Christmas for a reason. There's no Santa Claus in the Bible." She made snide remarks when my cousins and I watched cartoons with Santa in them. At one point, when I was a little older, she even said something to the effect of, "People who don't celebrate Christmas for anything other than Christ will go to hell." I don't know why my dad kept inviting her over, to be honest. Something about Christmas makes people think they're obligated to be with toxic people only because they're family. One Christmas Eve, I was already in my moody, rebellious teen years, so I wasn't very merry to begin with. I dreaded having to spend another night with people that couldn't stand each other. Aunt Karen was especially snide this year, making comments like, "You wouldn't be so gloomy if you went to church for once," or "Kids today need the fear of God to straighten up. OP's sins are making him miserable." The last straw was when I heard Karen essentially tell my dad, "Your son will grow up to be a criminal if he's not taught about God and the Bible." I'd had enough of this lady being a female dog every Christmas, so I hatched a plan to get her out of my dad's house. When I was a kid, I used to be lactose intolerant, but my dad kept a jug of milk in the fridge to go with the Christmas cookies he bought for our relatives. When no one was looking, I drank a glass of milk in the kitchen and carried on like nothing happened. After a while, I started feeling nauseous, of course, but I did my best to hide it. I made sure to stay near Aunt Karen whenever I could. Eventually, I started gagging, and then finally, I let out a projectile of white gunk and stomach acid onto Aunt Karen. She screamed in horror about me being a disgusting little brat, and how her sparkling red dress was ruined. I pretended to cry and act remorseful, making my other relatives sympathize with me. My dad was frustrated that he had to clean the carpets and sent me to my room. I eavesdropped on Karen lashing out at my dad for getting puked on, and finally, my dad seemed to get the hint that his sister shouldn't have been invited. He told her to leave, so she did, with my cousins in tow. I got in big trouble for not using the bathroom when I threw up, but I did not care. Karen made Christmas miserable for me, my dad, and most likely my cousins, her kids, so I decided to return the favour. I actually thought I'd take this small victory to my grave until I discovered Reddit. Merry Christmas, you filthy animal. Well, that is how you know this entitled aunt must have been absolutely disgusting to be around. If you're willing to make yourself throw up, like literally, you're lactose intolerant, you're willing to drink milk in order to throw up to make her leave, that just shows how bad of a person she must be and how uncomfortable she must make you feel. I can only imagine how horrible it must be for you guys if you have to spend Christmas with people you don't like just because they're family. I'm fortunate that I tend to like the majority of my family who we see on Christmas, so therefore I'll have a good time. But imagine, you have an aunt like this coming over every Christmas Eve, Christmas Day. You must hate the holiday season just because of one person. Yes, I know you should have probably gone to the bathroom, but what you did here was so elite, OP, literally making yourself throw up. Amazing stuff, well played to you. Also, I want to quickly say, your dad should not be saying to you that you've done a bad thing and sending you to your room. He should be thanking you because you've saved Christmas. Well done. Now moving on to our third story, entitled Dad Tries to Get Me Kicked Out of a Scouting Troop. Okay, so this story goes back about 7 years. I was in a scouting troop with one terrible kid. For the sake of privacy, we'll call him Stitches, as he was the biggest snitch of all time. Now, Stitches, while also being a huge narc, also had a history of complete apathy and slight psychopathy. When he was in the Cub Scouts, he straight up tackled a kid and choked him until he was unconscious because the kid asked him to lighten up and have fun. That cub never came back to the pack after that, and I completely understand why. Anyways, I was going on one of my first camping trips with the troop. It was about my third or fourth time, and I was starting to get the routine of camping down pat. Now, there were rules with my troop about sleeping in tents. One was that everyone had to have a tent buddy, meaning both you and the buddy had to set it up, sleep in it, keep it clean, and take it down. In other words, pretty standard stuff to help the scouts bond with each other, and it definitely worked. I'm still great friends with some of the kids I met in the troop, but for this trip, I had the misfortune of being paired with Stitches, since I missed a meeting because I was sick, and I got paired with him since no one else chose him. We drove over to the site and got straight to work setting everything up. One pair needed help setting up their tent, so I explained to Stitches that I was going to help them out, and he should get started without me since we're slowly losing daylight. Our scoutmaster also had a rule that we weren't allowed to start a campfire until after all the tents were set up, and it was going to be a cold night, so I thought I would help speed up the process. I finished helping those two, and I came back to see the tent still in the bag. Stitches hadn't even touched the dang thing. When I asked him why, he complained that I wasn't following the rules, to which he was right, but that meant that I had to set up the tent in the dark. Notice how I said I and not we, because he did not help at all. Way to be a hypocrite, but whatever. I needed a place to sleep, and I wasn't going to be petty like him. Now, at this campsite, there was a hiking trail that led to an abandoned railroad. We hiked it the next day at the perfect time, so we get back to the site right in time for dinner. On the hike, I found a rail spike on the ground, and I thought it would be a good souvenir to take home. I just moved, so I have no clue where it is, but I do still have it somewhere. Anyways, we got back from the hike and ate our food. That night, we made sure to have our tents cleaned out so we can leave early in the morning. I had left the rail spike in the tent and forgot to pack it up in my bag and put it in the car. The car was somewhat far away, so when I found it, I just left it there. But Stitches didn't like that. When we were heading to sleep, Stitches found it, and the following conversation ensued. "What's this?" "It's a rail spike I found on the trail. Pretty cool, right?" "Why didn't you pack it up?" Now, I had, and still do have, a dark sense of humour, so I cracked a joke. "Well, if a critter gets in the tent, I can stab it, and we'll have a nice breakfast in the morning." Stitches fell silent and avoided me the next day, meaning I had to take the tent down myself. We had a meeting the day after we got home from the trip, and Stitches was nowhere to be seen. My dad explained that he got a nasty email from Stitches' dad about the remark I had made, and that his son didn't feel comfortable in any environment with your son. I was shocked and near the point of tears, as I thought I could have gotten kicked out of the troop, and apparently he even tried to make that happen. The scoutmaster turned that down since he knew me and knew that I was way too much of a wuss to do anything of the sort. I apologised profusely to the kid at the next meeting I saw him at, which was a rifle shooting class. Ah yes, let 10-year-olds have at machines literally made for killing. Stitches and his father were both uncomfortable at the sight of me having a gun, which would be normal if it weren't for the fact that they were comfortable with everyone else. They tried to make the instructor kick me out of the class, claiming I was a psychopath. Look who's talking, but to no avail. I ended up being quite the sharpshooter, and the instructor even let me use his handgun. I was the only kid that got to try it out, and it was pretty cool, although I would never hand a person younger than 25 a loaded handgun if I were an instructor. No, neither would I. What's funny is that Stitch's father was kicked out of the troop for literally trying to stage a coup and become the scoutmaster. I ran into Stitches and his dad a few times as they started their own troop and showed up to big scouting events. Stitches seems to have grown up a bit. He even apologised to me once when I ran into him at a scouting summer camp. His dad would still give me and my troop looks though. Yeah, I mean, guys, to me, this dad sounds like an absolute loser, just very power hungry. What's he doing trying to stage a coup, by the way? This isn't like Cuba in the 1950s. What is that rubbish? I guess he's just, really unhappy with how his life is at the moment and thinks to himself, if I could just be the leader of my local scout troop, then my life will be fulfilled and my son will be proud of me. I doubt it, mate, because you sound like an absolute loser, is all I'm going to say. What I don't really understand though is that Stitches, the kid who choked another kid unconscious, you said, OP, at the start of this story, was scared because you said you could potentially stab a critter. That is not just hypocritical, but just really strange. I don't quite get that. But yeah, I don't know. In general, this whole family seem a little bit weird, at least the dad and his son anyway. Weird guys. Anyway, guys, that is going to do it for this episode of Entitled Parents. I really hope you have enjoyed it. If you did and you want more straight away, check out this playlist on screen of all my Entitled Parents videos. And if you are new, please make sure to subscribe. Oh, and if you're still watching, check out my merch store as well for a lovely hoodie. I'm not wearing it right now, but I probably should be. See you in a bit.